should have been a cowboy. I should have learned to roll out. Wearing my six-shooter, riding my pony on a cattle drive. This is it. This is the American West. This is every single thing that I've dreamed of. I will make my money by moving cattle to market, and then maybe, I'll get some land courtesy of the Homestead Act. These are my dreams. These are the dreams of someone from the West. Question number 1. Let's talk about this region that I speak. Following the Civil War, the westward movement of settlers intensified in this vast region that you see right here. What region am I talking about? Think land in between the Mississippi River and the Pacific Ocean. So this stuff over here is good and already settled. But folks like me, we're going out west. We're going out there for opportunity. And now what we think of the United States, the continental United States, is getting filled in, okay? Guys like me, Cowboy Spice, well, we're cowboys. Years immediately before and after the Civil War, that was the era of the American cowboy. Now, what do? Well, we moved cows, all right? Marked by long cattle drives over unfenced, open land to get cattle to market. It's expensive. These cows are worth a lot of money once we get them to market, but it's tough to make that happen. So if you think of cowboys on horses, throwing the rope, bringing in the cattle, getting those guys to market, that is the era of the American cowboy, okay? Now, they weren't all just cowboys. You also had a lot of Americans who wanted to rebuild their lives after the Civil War. The Civil War destroyed so much in America. There's political destruction, economic destruction, social destruction. Well, people want to go to another place, maybe start all over. And the law that will do that is the Homestead Act of 1862. The Homestead Act of 1862 gave free public land. You got land called a homestead in the Western territories for settlers. But it's not like the government was just boom, 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 giving them away. See, the catch was you have to live on and farm that land. But what an opportunity. An opportunity for your own piece of land to build your home, your homestead. Homestead Act of 1862, all right? All right, now, Southerners, including African Americans, will go west to seek new opportunities after the Civil War. It makes sense because the South gets destroyed by the Civil War, and so many people want to go west. And also, African Americans, what an opportunity to go west, escape the poverty and the discrimination of now the Jim Crow South. All right, see this invention right here? Woo, that's a biggie. That's the mechanical reaper, invented by Cyrus McCormick. It made farming profitable by increasing the efficiency of production. So if you grow lots of stuff, you can harvest all those crops faster. Well, if you can harvest faster, that means let's grow more stuff. But remember, you got to get all those crops to market. Well, don't worry, because you got choo-choo trains. Railroads opened new lands in the West for settlement by linking resources and markets. So, you got your stuff, you want to get your stuff, your crops to market, you're going to use the railroads. Railroads, boom. Mechanical reaper, boom, got it, beautiful. All right, now look at these regions. Let's talk maps, let's talk areas. First, this region right here, whoops, I'm all over the place. Here I am, is the Great Plains. Think of the Great Plains roughly between Mississippi River until you get to the Rocky Mountains. Now, this region over here is the Rocky Mountain region. So think of states today that have a good chunk of the Rocky Mountains in them, all right? These two regions, the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains regions, grew dramatically as new states get added. The continental U.S. is formed. And what we mean by that is the U.S. from ocean to ocean, from Atlantic to the Pacific. The Alaska and Hawaii, we're not thinking about that right now. We're thinking about mainland United States of America, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. All right, beautiful, great, awesome. Okay, now here is the tragic part of all this westward movement. There's people there already, and the forcible removal of Native Americans continued throughout the 19th century. So fighting over land, just like going back to the colonial days. You had the British, you had the Spanish fighting over land with the Native Americans in the East. Now it's just happening out west, okay? As settlers continued to move west following the Civil War, more and more forcible removal of Native Americans occurred, all right? Beautiful. Now let's talk a little immigration here. There's old immigration, there's new immigration, at least for what we're thinking in our courts. Prior to 1871, most immigrants came from Northern and Western Europe. What am I talking about? Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, a couple of big countries to begin with. So that's where the old stuff was occurring. Then there's a shift, just the opposite. Instead of Northern and Western Europe, Southern and Eastern Europe, as well as Asia. We see an increase of immigration from Asia. So countries, Italy, Greece, Poland, Russia, Hungary, former Yugoslavia. How about in Asia? China and Japan. We see different types of people coming to these United States of America. Now, when these immigrants, especially the European immigrants, came, they often went through Ellis Island, which is in New York City. While in Ellis Island, they got a nice view of this guy right there, and that is the Statue of Liberty. Their first view of America was often the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France. We can think of, hey, back in the day, remember France helped us out, Ben Franklin, Battle of Yorktown, we got an army and navy from France. Beautiful. All right, now, key idea. Immigrants began the process of assimilation into what was termed the American melting pot. What that means is you've got immigrants from all over the world coming to the United States, and when they go into the melting pot, they become just like all of us. They just become Americans, a mix of different nationalities and cultures and customs that assimilate, that become like what we think of as the melting pot that is the United States of America. All right, but this is tough stuff, okay? Immigrants settled into ethnic neighborhoods, and they worked to learn English, to adopt American customs, and to become citizens of the United States of America. You know what helped out a lot? Where you are at this moment. The public schools served an essential role in the process of assimilating immigrants into American society. Think two things. All classes are in English, so this is forcing these children to learn English, and Pledge of Allegiance every day, man. Boom. How about that? So we have the public schools playing an essential role in the assimilation process, okay? Now, why did these immigrants want to come to America? Two things, simple things. One is freedom. There was a limited amount of political freedom at this time, and America was viewed as a place to get it, and better lives for their families. You always hear this. Parents want best for their kids. Well, immigrants wanted best for their children, so they came to the United States of America, all right? Now, these immigrants, and let's talk real quick about the Chinese immigrants, but they helped fuel the industrial growth of America. Around this time, the United States is going to go from being a really big country that's kind of sleepy industrially to just exploding with industrialization. And the Chinese workers helped by helping to build the Transcontinental Railroad. Once you have a railroad, which will link from east to west, it intensified the westward movement of settlers. You got more folks going west, and well, largely you can thank the Chinese workers who worked on the Transcontinental Railroad. Just another example of immigrants helping with the industrial growth of the United States of America. All right, hey, we're still on 12. We're still on 12. Immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, well, they worked in textile, steel mills of the Northeast, and the coal mines of the East, where were worked largely by immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. So the point is the U.S. is industrializing, and these immigrants are providing key assistance, key roles to making this happen, all right? Now, but these conditions, man, tough stuff, okay? Immigrants often worked for low pay and endured dangerous working conditions. This is before the progressive movement, so you don't have laws at this time to regulate working conditions, and pay is super, super, super low, okay? All right, last one on the very bottom. The United States of America, those Americans who are already in the country, they were, oh great, more immigrants, we're so excited about this. Not at all. Immigrants often faced hardship and hostility. Fear and resentment. Here's the big fear. Folks worried, oh, these new immigrants, they're going to take away our jobs. They're going to work those jobs that we have, but they're going to do it for even lower pay than we will accept. All right, flip that review guide to the back side. This prejudice was often based on religious and cultural differences. Remember, a different group of people coming from Europe, okay, and Asia, and then we've got Southern and Eastern Europe. So we have different religions. Think Jewish, think Catholic, okay, different cultures, different ideas, different languages, and all of this leads to a lot of prejudice, okay? Mounting resentment being all the Americans who did not like the increase in immigration, led to two laws that were designed to limit immigration. And they were, first, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. That does exactly what you think it did. It shut down Chinese immigration starting in 1882. And then the Immigration Restriction Act of 1921. This established quotas. This political cartoon does a good job of showing it. You had a lot of people from Europe who wanted to come to the United States. It dramatically reduced the amount of immigrants. So, obviously, we're still on 15. These laws cut off most immigration to America over the next several decades. Look, increase, and boom, we see a dramatic decrease in immigration, and that is because of primarily those two laws. All right, industry. I teased it. I talked about great industrialization. How about some examples? Well, first of all, technological change, man, spurred the growth of industry. New technologies come about that lead to industry developing. And where did it develop? Well, mainly in northern cities. Okay, we're not talking about a lot of southern industry right now. We're talking more about northern industry, okay? Okay, so how did it actually transform? Well, there's three big reasons. The U.S. economically transformed because of this system right here, and that is laissez-faire. Laissez-faire capitalism. That means government hands-off. That means capitalism where government plays an extremely limited role. The federal government isn't going to get involved in the workings of a business. Now, there were, though, here's an exception to that. Special considerations were made. Here's the example. Land grants were given for railroad builders. If you look at this map over here, see all this land that's kind of this darker shaded in color? That's all land the U.S. government gave to railroad companies saying, hey, build some railroads. We'll give you some of this land where you're building it. So that's an example that even we had laissez-faire, that there still was special considerations that were being given. All right, that's one reason. How about two? We get a lot of immigrants that are going to help work, and you get a lot of people moving from farms. An increased labor supply. If you are transforming economically, you need lots of folks to work these jobs. Well, you get it from immigration, and you get it from the amount of Americans who are moving away from an agrarian, agricultural, farm-based life to more of an industrial, manufacturing-based existence, okay? Hey, I said three. I know, hey, you want to hear three. Hey, listen, relax. I get you three. The United States economically transformed because of three. America's wealth of natural resources and navigable rivers. See, these two are important. You can go and dig and mine and find coal and use the trees of the American South. Use all sorts of natural resources. But you got to move those resources, and the U.S. has great rivers which help get stuff from point A to point B. So natural resources and rivers are a huge help. All right, how about some of these legends, these captains of industry as they are called? Who's the railroad guy? The railroad guy's name was Cornelius Vanderbilt. He was the leader of the railroad industry. He consolidated lots of different tracks and made them really big tracks, okay? I know what you're thinking. How am I going to remember this? Well, don't worry. Vanderbilt built railroads. Hey, Andrew Carnegie was the steel guy. He utilized a process made by a British guy named Sir Henry Bessemer. It was called the Bessemer steel process. But what Carnegie was able to use was to build a gigantic steel operation and make a lot of cash doing it and provide a lot of steel for the industrializing United States of America. How am I going to remember Carnegie? Cars are made of steel. Okay, good. This guy right here is John D. Rockefeller, and Rockefeller was the oil guy. John D. Rockefeller was the leader of the oil industry. His company, Standard Oil, was the giant of the field and worked in the oil refinery business. How are we going to remember John D. Rockefeller oil? Rocks are on the ground where oil is found. And the last one is JP Morgan. JP Morgan is in the financial industry. Today there's a bank, JP Morgan Chase, that is gets its name from JP Morgan. So JP Morgan helped guys like Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, and Carnegie to pool all their wealth and to grow in corporations. But he's not making stuff so much as he is the financial whiz. How are we going to remember this? Well, more money, mo, money. Limited liability is an important concept. Major businesses benefited from increase in corporations which limited liability. Okay, so two things. If you want to have your own oil business, I don't know, railroad industry, whatever, you can have a corporation. And here's the beautiful thing about a corporation is if you do something horrible and you fail and whatever, okay, your corporation can go bye-bye, but you won't necessarily get personally ruined. That is limited liability. Another example of the US government having policies which are going to help grow American industry, all right? So there's limited liability occurring and there's more corporations, all right? Sweet. Hey, a couple other key guys. One's Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison is credited with the invention of the light bulb and for his work in using electricity. Electricity is going to light up these cities and help further with industrialization. Also, telephone. Telephone invented by Graham Bell. No, not Santa Claus. Alexander Graham Bell. He forms the Bell Telephone Company, which becomes Bell Atlantic, which today is AT&T. All right, unions. A couple of big unions. Let's talk about these. First off, the oldest labor union were the Knights of Labor. Hey, remember that because knights are really old, right? Get it? Ha, 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 ha. The problem with the Knights of Labor is they go to decline. They declined as a result of the Haymarket Square riot. In the Haymarket Square riot, there was some shooting and some boom, 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 boom bombing. And most people, especially portrayed in the newspapers, blamed it on the Knights of Labor. So the Knights will go into decline. Now, there were other strikes. There were a lot of strikes. Union experienced difficulties with all these failed strikes. One was the Homestead Steel strike. So remember steel, that's going to be Andrew Carnegie. The Pullman strike had to do with railroads. It was also a failed strike. And the big union was the American Railway Union, which was led by this guy, and this guy's name is Eugene Debs. Eugene Debs led the American Railway Union. The American Railway Union took part in the Pullman strike, which was a failure. So these strikes, well, they're not really going all that well. But how about another labor union? How about a huge one? How about the American Federation of Labor? They were led by this guy, and that guy is Samuel Gompers. The American Federation of Labor, a dominant labor union after the Knights of Labor, was led by Samuel Gompers. You know, women were participating as well. Female workers organized into labor unions. The successful International Ladies Garment Workers Union, a mouthful and an example of a successful labor union that was organized by women, okay? All right, beautiful. Now, hey, let's talk good stuff, man. You're getting too sad on me, you know? Labor unions were able to make gains in limited work hours and regulated working conditions. So, even though the struggle was all these failed strikes, there were gains by unions, specifically limited work hours and regulated working conditions, okay? All right, beautiful, 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 beautiful. Hey, let's go, last section right here, African Americans, okay? After Reconstruction, Southern states passed Jim Crow laws. What are Jim Crow laws? Well, they're what we know. They're segregation laws. They forced the separation of the races in public places. That's a really fancy way of saying segregation. So segregated restrooms, water fountains, schools, hospitals. You know, that's Jim Crow stuff, okay? How about a court case? The court case of Plessy versus Ferguson. Did it uphold segregation or did it strike down segregation? Unfortunately, it upheld segregation. What? How could that be the case? Well, the Supreme Court says it has to be separate but equal, and if it's separate but equal, then it would not violate the 14th Amendment. Well, 14th Amendment is the Citizenship Amendment, but we know that they weren't ever equal anyway, so the whole thing is ridiculous. We need some people to try to fix this situation. Well, one's going to be Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells fought to end lynching in America. Her big campaign were anti-lynching information and legislation to go through Congress. While this is happening, you got a lot of African Americans leaving the South to get jobs and to avoid all the discrimination, all the Jim Crow stuff. This is called the Great Migration. The Great Migration was an exodus of African Americans out of the South, and they would be inspired by people like Ida B. Wells in her attempt to end lynching in America. See this guy right here, his name is Booker. Booker T. Washington. His belief is that it is all about cash money, dollar bills. Y'all, he believes that equality was through vocational education. What does that mean? That means going to school to learn specific skills to get a job, I don't know, in agriculture, in plumbing, in carpentry, all right? Because if you get jobs, you get a little economic success that ends the problem of homelessness, the problems of joblessness. What about segregation? You know what Booker T. Washington says? I'm going to accept social separation. That does not mean he likes it. He does not like social separation. But what he's going to say is, let's worry about vocational education first. We'll deal with segregation later. Just the opposite of Booker T. Washington is this guy, W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois believed education, all that vocational stuff, it's meaningless without equality. Equality is the key. So he says, let's do two things. Let's get civil rights. Let's get political equality, voting rights. So civil rights, and all that segregation nonsense, political equality, let's make sure that African Americans can vote. He helped form the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That was something that W.E.B. Du Bois helped get off the ground, and they will test all that segregation law stuff later in U.S. courts, okay? All right, last thing. Last one, let's do it. During the early 20th century, African Americans began moving to northern cities. Remember, this is the Great Migration. They were there to get jobs and to escape the poverty/discrimination that was called, this whole movement, the Great Migration. And now you have all the skills that you need from the Old West to the turn of the century.